Hey guys, Jim here. I want to share with you now a fairly new arrival that I got just a few weeks ago from Mr. Dustin Turpin. This is the Peril. A little bit different than his standard Perils, actually quite a bit different. We'll go through those differences here in a moment. This is the third knife I've gotten from Dustin. My first was the Strife that I got directly from Dustin. An amazing, amazing knife. You guys have hopefully already seen the video on this. If not, please do check it out. I'll try to remember to put a link up here, make it easier for you. And my second one was the collaboration he did with Tashi called the Flash. Another truly outstanding knife, one that I feel very, very lucky to have in my collection. They're only going to make 10 of these. He's only made 5 so far, and this was the very first one that was sold. So this was actually pretty darn special to me. But do keep in mind, in the future, at some point, you are going to see 5 more of those, so you might still get a chance to get one. This one, however, is very, very special to me. This one's been in the works for a long-ass time. Now, when I got my Flash, I didn't get it directly from Dustin, but Dustin was able to hook me up with the only retailer that he uses that was going to be getting these to help make sure that I got one. So the last time I got a knife directly from Dustin was this one, and that was right around 2.5 years ago, I'd want to say. So ever since then, I basically said, Dustin, I want one of everything you ever make. And whenever that time comes, you know, I still have to wait. And people seem to think because Dustin and I are friends that I get bumped up on some kind of magic list and I get shit before everybody else. So not the case. The Peril has been out for about almost 2 years, and this is the first time I've had a chance to get mine. We actually started developing the concept of this knife for this particular build 11 months ago. So I've been waiting ever since then. So I don't want you to think that I somehow jumped in front of anybody and got one, but it has taken quite a long time, and it's so well worth the wait. You know, and we go through that with a lot of our favorite makers. You're going to wait a long time for any good maker. You know, whether it be 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years, there's almost always going to be a wait associated with it. Now let's take a look at what he has written right here so we get a better understanding of what the knife is. This is the Peril, so it's a little bit smaller than the Strife and a little bit larger than the Insight. And this particular blade is done with Nichols Elmax Core San Mai. He is black in the titanium for the bolsters. It is a bolster lock, which is very unique for this particular knife. And it's a one-off because of, as we like to call it, the glowy shit. And I'm going to try to demonstrate that for you as best I can when I turn my lights off here. But let's get into what makes this particular knife so awesome. First off, it's about an 8¼ inch overall length with a 3½ inch blade. So to get the size comparisons out of the way, we'll put it right next to the Strife, and you'll get a chance to see really what the differences are. The Strife is just a little bit bigger. It's obviously not a ginormous knife, but there is a difference there. He follows the same themes in his builds on both models, meaning you can either get the tri-plane frame lock, or like what I have here, this is the liner lock version, where you get the scale and bolster. And then he does the slots, and then slots within slots in the carbon fiber. And that's really where this one-off came from, because when he built this and I got it, I went, dude, you know what would really be awesome is if inside of those slots, underneath, you had moon glow, and the glow would be coming through the slots. And that was when he let me know about his severe disdain for anything that glows. I'm not going to say that he hates glowing shit, but he really strongly dislikes it. And in his mind, it's a trendy thing. It's a little bit of a gimmick. And you know what? I kind of have to agree. I don't really think in 10 or 15 years we're going to see a lot of knife makers working with moon glow or other substances that glow, maybe a little tritium here and there. But, you know, it really is kind of the flavor of the month right now. I think it's cool. It's fun. I like shit that glows. I have a lot of tritium lanterns and tritium tubes in my watches. Obviously, you know, you guys have seen my Louis rings that glow and stuff. I like that stuff. I'm like a big kid anyway. But he kind of felt it was a little bit hokey. So what I did was I kind of went behind his back, and when I got my production Strife, the collaboration that he did with Jason Browse, I said, Jason, I want to really fuck with Dustin here. I want to send back my production strife to you, and let's put some moon glow underneath the scales. He's like, oh, dude, that'd be funny as hell. He hates that shit. And before I even did that, and I never ended up doing it, I kind of told Dustin about it. He's like, you really want this shit to glow, don't you? I'm like, there's something about having those slots that makes me want to have glow stuff under there. So he says, I tell you what, we were going to be building an Insight next, and that's just a long story, but the Insight didn't happen. We switched over to the Peril. And in the middle of all the other changes that I wanted to request, he says, I tell you what, we'll do something as far as the glowing. I said, well, if we're going to be doing Timascus in the pivot collars and Timascus for the backspacer, you know, the predominant color is going to be blue. I don't want to have moon glow because moon glow is green. So I contacted my friend Louie, whatever Louie on Instagram, who makes those really awesome rings that I've got. And he makes glowing material in various colors, blue and purple and green and I think red. I said, can I get some of that blue stuff from you to send over to my friend Dustin to experiment with on building me a knife? And actually, he was so cool about it, he donated. He sent a sheet of a couple of different colors to Dustin for free. You know, because who knows if this was going to work out, you know, to charge us. He's like, yeah, I don't want to charge you money for something that, you know, he may not end up being able to work with. So what we did, or what I should say, what Dustin did, instead of just putting the glow, and there it is right there, that is the blue Louis glow underneath the scale. He has it under both scales, and that's why it has this specialized pocket clip. This is not how his pocket clips normally come. He did do a slotted skeletonized clip for this. But it's also on either side of this floating Timascus backspacer, and something I've never seen anybody else do, it's actually underneath the pivot on both sides. Now, he had experimented with a few different ideas for the pivot. This is a pivot that does not typically exist in his knives. This is the first time he's done a pivot that looks like this, and then did the Timascus collar for it to sit into. But inside of the cup of Timascus that comes up as a collar, this blue glow material is set down inside. So when the lights go out, you see a blue glow coming around from the slots around this 5-star pattern. It's really friggin' wild. So we've got glow here, glow here, glow here and here, and glow here and here. Now, the thing with the blue glow is it's not as intensely bright as the green. So again, when we go to do this in the video, it may or may not show up. What I'm going to do, now that I finally learned some basic editing skills, at the beginning of this video, or at the end of the video, one of the two, I'm going to insert some images that'll show you how it actually glows when, you know, the naked eye sees it. So let's get into how amazing this knife really is. This is the Nichols Elmax Core San Mai. I love this particular pattern because we have a lot of it on this side and very little here, a lot of the exposed core on this side. And it really gives a completely unique look. It's almost like holding, like when Kirby Lambert does his MGT grind. You know, on one side, typically, he'll have the multi-grind Tanto done on this side, and the other side will be a completely different grind, so you have kind of a split personality. And that's kind of how I see this blade. Some people may not like it, but I do. So when I look at the lock side of my knife, I've got this almost whirlpool pattern going on here. And on this side, it looks much more like a Damascus. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. So what makes this knife unique besides the fact it has glowing shit in it? Well, number one, this is the first Peril to ever have gotten a San Mai blade. This actually comes from the exact same blade stock that my friend's Strife was done in last year when Dustin did that auction knife, and my buddy Abe was able to get it. So they're basically twins. They're off of the same bar stock. The only thing that makes it different is he has blackened all of the titanium because we wanted everything on this knife to pop. It was meant to be a subtle knife, but for every little thing that was done, the little pops of color, we wanted to pop a little bit more than just having standard, you know, gray looking titanium. So he did a beautiful job creating black titanium all the way throughout. and it does allow that, that Timascus to really pop. Follow that through in the clip. You'll notice the clip is blind screwed. No exposed hardware like we would typically see on his knives. And that takes us to the next part. This is the very first time Dustin has ever sold a knife that is sans hardware. Obviously we have the exposed pivot, but you do not have any exposed hardware holding the knife together. Typically, when you look at his bolstered and scaled knives, they look like this. There's a screw in the bolster and 2 screws in the scales. So you've got a lot of hardware showing here, and that's very common. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a common way of building a knife. But we wanted to make this one a bit more special. So it has a very smooth, very clean look. No interruption in the lines by having screws. This is also the very first time we're seeing a bolster lock in a Peril. I'm very certain he's going to be doing that again, so if you see more Perils in the future, you might see a bolster lock. And this came from me, really. I love having a frame lock, but I don't like having a naked lock side. I really wanted to be able to have the show scale on both sides, have the glow on both sides, but have the functionality of a frame lock. So this is what he was able to do. It's also the first time we're seeing a Peril with a pivot collar, first time with that pivot. And I believe, and I might be mistaken, the first time he's done a floating Timascus backspacer on this particular model. So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in this knife that makes it special, that makes it unique. Dustin knows that when it comes to his knives, I don't sell them. I've had a lot of offers for my Strife, a lot of obscene offers, and I still don't take them. And this is partly because I really love the knives, and partly because Dustin is a good friend, and it's just a sign of respect that, you know, I may go through a lot of different knives in my collection. I buy, sell, and trade all the time. But, you know, these 3, and whatever future Turpins I get, are always going to be those special pieces that hold a place in my heart, and I don't really see them going anywhere. So it's very likely that these 3 and future models will end up going to my 2 sons when I pass away. So let me see if I can get this to glow for you, because that really is part of the fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break out my black light, get that cranked up, and let's see. And the black light might not be strong enough, because like I said, the blue is a very faint glow. It's like comparing, if you're into watches at all, it's like comparing a watch that has tritium tubes versus a watch that has super luminova. While the tritium is longer lasting, obviously, and it's a more consistent glow, it's much more dim than actually super luminova is. So let's see if that's enough time. Pardon me while I try to get this going here. There we go. It actually did show up nicely. So there is the blue glow. My camera probably is not going to focus very well on this. I apologize. It has no reference to follow. And let's blast a little bit of that same light onto a backspacer. And you'll get a chance to see that glowing as well. Normally I save my black light just for when strippers show up. I make sure they wear white lingerie so that it glows nicely, but it's working nicely for this video. And there you see the backspacer and its glowing spacers around it. So yeah, it is all sorts of cool. It's a fun little novelty. Is it going to save my life at any point? No. Is it going to make it any more practical for cutting purposes? No. But it certainly has a cool factor to it. So if you're ever at my house and I turn out the lights unexpectedly, no, I am not going to get naked in the shadows. I'm just showing you the glow of my knife. But also, I probably still will be getting naked in the shadows. One other thing that I loved about this that is absent on the Strife and on the Flash is a lanyard post built into the frame. I knew I wanted to have a lanyard on this knife because I wanted to finally use my Mokutai lanyard bead that I got from Daryl Ralph. He gifted this to me a few months ago. I've never had the right knife to put it on. And it's almost perfect for this particular application. So I was really happy to be able to finally use that. And I do find that on this particular knife, the way that it narrows at the butt end, this is rather useful for helping to get it out of the pocket. As with all Turpins, the action is truly phenomenal. Nice and smooth and fast. So that he did not interrupt the pattern on the blade, he put his maker's mark here on the spine of the blade. Kind of classy, kind of cool. What a great little knife. His jimping, by the way, is some of the best I've ever felt. It's not sharp where it tears up your clothing or it tears up your fingers, but when you throw your thumb on that, it just doesn't move. It's really, really grippy. And it's the same way on my other two knives as well. His actions are so freaking amazing. So there you have it, guys. I want to make sure I got a chance to get a nice full HD video on this. I've had a lot of requests. I've been posting this a lot on Instagram since I've gotten it. I carry this knife a lot. So here is your first full HD close-up view of the knife and all the little details. I love that pivot. I love the work that he's done here on this knife all the way around. Was it worth the 11-month wait for the build and almost a year before that to get to that point? Yeah, abso-freaking-lutely. There's not a thing about this knife that I don't love. One of the things that I really appreciate about it is while we have a lot of details in it, and we are using materials like Damascus, it's not an over pimpy knife. It's very subtle in its overall execution. We didn't do Damascus bolsters and clip and all that stuff like I would typically want to do. Instead, it's a bit more low-key. It's certainly a great EDC knife that has some really great detail to it when you start showing somebody. And this was all kinds of fun for Dustin to build. Oh my goodness. He would send me work in progress pictures and you'd see shavings of glowing stuff all over his table and everything. And yeah, it was kind of a pain in the ass. And we switched to the idea for the black titanium right at the very end. It was probably the last decision that was made right before he started putting the finishing touches on all the components. And we both kind of agreed that it would help all of these little details pop a little bit more. So I think that was a really great decision. Yeah, it's already got some carry marks on it. That's just the way it's going to be. All my knives have carry marks on them, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. But that's typically why I try to get a video done before I carry a knife, but I just didn't have the time, and I wasn't going to keep myself from carrying this knife for that reason. So there you go, guys. That is my Turpin collection so far as of November 2015. Hopefully November 2016 I'll have a fourth one to throw in here, but we'll see about that. I'm going to make it a lot less challenging, I think. This was a rather taxing knife on Dustin, and I really do have to say thank you again to him for taking on all the additional work. There was one additional thing that we did, just for sake of clarity. The original pocket clip that I had requested was going to be in Damascus, and then he put 3 slots in it to put the blue glow inside of there as well. And then, you know, at some point I probably forgot to ask for it to be Damascus or whatnot. He did it in a different material. I think he did it in titanium. And the problem with that was it blocked the glow from the scales on this side. And because of the orientation of the clip and the orientation of the slots in the scale, it made it look like the pocket clip was somehow crooked. Obviously it wasn't. It was just as straight as this one. But it was just an optical illusion created by all the slots. So at the very last minute, he came up with this idea. And you know what? I kind of like it a little bit more because maybe the other one would have been overkill. This helps keep the knife somewhat subtle. So there you have it. That is the complete story. That is the knife. Thank you guys for watching again as always. And I'm out of here until the next video.